To understand how bad this situation is with Iran, you have to understand how we got here. And it doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. See, back in July 2015, after more than 2 years of negotiations, a historical and unprecedented agreement was agreed to by Iran and 6 other countries. All of these parties agreed that Iran would stop developing nuclear weapons in exchange for the sanctions being lifted off of the country. Now, the parties involved in this deal were the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, China, Germany. We all agreed on something back then, geez. And it was overseen by the European Union. Now, while there was very broad support of this deal, there were a few countries that opposed it. Israel was actually the most vocal against it, which you wouldn't necessarily expect because for the last 2 decades, they've been saying that Iran is like a couple weeks away from developing nuclear weapons. But there were other countries like Saudi and the UAE who expressed concern, saying that the lifting of these sanctions would empower Iran financially and would grow their influence in the Middle East. And keep in mind, this agreement was widely regarded by arms control experts as, quote, the most intrusive nuclear inspection regime ever negotiated. Not only did the IAEA have unprecedented access to Iran's facilities, but no other non-nuclear weapon state has ever agreed to this level of nuclear regulation. Following the signing of the agreement, Iran shipped 97% of its uranium stockpile to Russia. They dismantled centrifuges and sealed equipment. They allowed 24/7 surveillance of their nuclear facilities. And from 2015 to 2018, the IAEA repeatedly confirmed Iran's full compliance and 0 violations. But why I say it only lasted 3 years is because the US then got a new administration. And in May 2018, Trump exited the deal unilaterally and reimposed those sanctions on Iran. Now, he said it was because it was the worst deal ever negotiated, and he claimed that it was fundamentally flawed, allowing Iran to continue building ballistic missiles and still allow them to fund militant groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis. And I guess in theory, you could say that it makes sense because Trump believed that by reintroducing these sanctions, it would crush Iran's economy and it would force them back to the negotiating table to agree to a broader and tougher deal. After exiting the deal, Netanyahu called the move by the US brave, while Saudi and the UAE also welcomed it. But the other countries, man, that were part of this deal, they were pissed. The UK, France, China, Germany, Russia, they all stayed in the deal. And they even tried to create a workaround deal to trade with Iran. And they tried to do this by not using the US dollar. But the US dollar, man, is powerful, and it ultimately failed. But another thing that unfortunately failed was the strategy that Iran would return to the negotiating table. They never did. And just a year later, they began enriching uranium again, using advanced centrifuges again, and blocking parts of the IAEA inspections. And things kind of spiraled from here because Israel began claiming again that they are weeks away from developing nuclear weapons. Biden became president. He tried to return to the negotiating table with them. It failed. And then fast forward to 2025, Trump tries to get them to the negotiating table again. But because those negotiations have failed, ultimately, he's taken the forceful approach. And last night, as we all know, 3 nuclear sites bombed. So at this point, Iran pretty much has 2 options: negotiate or retaliate. If they retaliate, not only do they keep their sanctions on their economy, they also risk losing their ability to develop nuclear weapons by force. And also, we all get screwed because prices of oil go up, lives will be lost, and more countries inevitably get dragged in. But if Iran decide to negotiate, it'll likely be a deal that is tougher and broader than ever before. So after years of kicking this can down the road, we've now run out of road. Now, there's no good options for anyone. It's either bend or break. And the decision makers who got us here, they'll say, hey guys, we had no choice. There you go.